Hey everyone, Dan with HRT, and we're back with Brad from Low Light Innovations, and we're bringing you part 2 of the night vision knowledge series. And this one's going to focus a little bit more on how to ruin your night vision. It's going to be a very expensive video.
That's true.
So I think the first question that we have that we wanted to run through is what happens in highlight environments or bright light? What happens to your performance, and what happens maybe to the tube?
So highlight is one of those things that everyone is always very scared about with night vision, because everybody knows that you can break and damage your night vision in a highlight scenario. However, I will say that night vision is a lot more durable than a lot of people think. Even in a bright scenario like this, I am not really that concerned about turning my tubes on here. It's really nothing bad is going to happen. As long as I'm not staring at a bright light for a long period of time. So the metric I like to give to people is you can use your night vision in an environment that's about as bright as the light that you leave on in your kitchen at night, that kind of brightness, that dim light. And as long as you're not going to be like staring at a single light source for a very long period of time, you're probably not going to be encountering any problems. Bright lights in general are just not good, but hey, you can use it in that scenario. In highlight, night vision loses its performance. So the resolution goes down, you get a muddy, unclear image. The power supplies don't really like it, and they don't respond to changes as quickly. So highlight is one of those things where you gain the benefit of being able to transition between a highlight and a low light environment instantaneously because you're still looking through your night vision. But you don't really get the same benefits as looking through your normal eyes. It's one of those things where, hey, you can still use it, but it does take a toll on your tubes to do that.
Okay.
Point sources of light, extremely bright flashes, things like that, will damage your night vision. So if you're throwing around flashbangs and you stare at the flashbang when it goes off, it will put a blem on your night vision. If you have a really, really bright aiming laser and you're pointing it at one place and staring at the laser spot, it will damage your night vision. If someone sweeps a laser across your field of vision, if you're next to an M1 Abrams and it turns on its ranging laser, it will damage your night vision. So bright lights are something to be avoided. However, working in sort of a lit environment is not super dangerous to your tubes.
It sounds like the things that are going to damage your normal eye, if they were able to pick up the IR spectrum, like obviously if you stare at a flashbang yourself over and over, it's going to probably do some negative things.
Exactly.
Okay.
If it'll leave a green spot on your vision, you probably should not look at it with night vision.
Okay. That's a good ratio to think about. And it also sounds like you could see something that is bright, but as long as you don't stare at it and allow it to sit in the same area on the tube, it's like a laser, that would be okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the brighter and the tighter a spot of light is on the night vision, the more of an issue it is.
Okay.
If you're just in sort of a bright environment for a few moments, it should be all right.
Okay.
Treat lights like radiation with night vision. It's all about the exposure time and the brightness of the source.
Cool. So what about, let's say, daytime use? Like maybe I'm here inside of the studio and then I walk outside and I flip them up and they all of a sudden get this natural light.
It's not good.
Not good.
So
let me specify if they're still on, because we want to touch about off with light later.
Yeah. So if they're still on, with Generation 3 tubes, you're going to induce like bad things to your tubes. You're going to get blems, you're going to get problems, especially if they look at the sun in any way, shape, or form, or if they're in sort of that 40 to 50 degree cone of the sun where you get reflections into the lenses. That's not good. Some Generation 2 tubes, Generation 2 Plus tubes will tolerate that kind of thing without blemming. But the modern Gen 3 tubes, no, you're going to induce a bad problem by doing that.
Okay.
That's why people sell day caps. That's why you have covers for your night vision. That's why we put a rotary knob on ours so you know that it's off. Having your nods in daylight, no, just put them in a pouch. Don't play around with nods in daylight because you spent a lot of money on these systems. Like, you know, all it takes is that one little frivolous act to break it and you're out a bunch of money.
Right. I feel like we see a lot of the cool guy pictures where they're out in the day and they got the nods on and it's not capped or anything. And that sounds like maybe it's a bad idea.
I mean, if you're buying it yourself, no.
Yeah.
If you're a cool guy and they're buying it for you.
Right. Totally different. Yep. Totally different use there. So to kind of to that end, what about if I take the cap off the front of my tubes here and I walk around in the middle of the day, or light hits it, the unit is off, but I'm getting light into the lens area? What does that maybe do?
So it depends on what you mean by off as well. So a night vision device will still retain a little bit of, I want to say, oomph for a little while after it's been turned off. If you're experienced with like old generation 0, generation 1 devices, like the eBay special, like $50 night vision scopes, you'll know that you turn those things on for like 5 seconds and you can use them for like 10 minutes because they retain that energy. Well, these generation 2, generation 3 image intensifiers will still do a little bit when they're turned off for a little while. That's where you see a lot of people like getting blems when they're off. The other thing to keep in mind is that you have a lens here, and I'm sure everyone as a kid played around with the magnifying glass and the ants. And so
I did that last night.
You know, it's not very good to like focus like the energy and the power of the sun onto like an extremely sensitive, like polycrystalline, gallium arsenide. You're not going to have a good result if you're focusing a bunch of energy onto that and heating it up and having lots of energy on it. It's designed for darkness. It's not designed for 1,000 watts per square meter of sunlight.
Right.
I've seen a lot of people like say it's true, debunk it, say it's true, debunk it. I've never spent the $3,000 to find out myself.
Sure.
I would say that you can buy caps for your night vision for not a lot of money. You can make sure it's off. And it's better to not blend your nods up with the sun than it is to blend them up with the sun.
Right. My normal, which we found out I didn't do, but my normal storage routine is to take the battery out after I've turned them off. And that way it's a little bit extra insurance there. What about if you do find you have some damage in your tube? And I know it varies based on what damage has been done. But what are some remedies potentially if you find damage in your tubes?
So the first thing you should do if you notice something with your night vision device is you should make sure that it's not like dust or smudges. That's one of those things. There's never going to be a perfect, perfectly clean night vision device. There's always going to be some amount of stuff on the inside. And I've seen a lot of people when I was repairing night vision that said that they had blems that showed up and it was just dust. You can tell. It's kind of easy to tell once you know what you're looking for. And once you confirm that it's not dust on the inside, it's not dust on the lenses, then you can start moving into like, okay, what do I do to fix this? The rule of thumb is that if it is sort of like a shadow or not a fully opaque blem, then you can usually fix it by black boxing the unit. And what black boxing means is you turn your unit on and put it into a sealed, opaque box, like a shoe box, a Pelican case, put it in a closet, put it in the basement, away from light, and you just run the night vision unit. And a lot of people run them for like 20, 30, 40 hours. And as it runs, it will sort of heal itself a little bit. It will improve that problem that you just had with the night vision device. It won't fix a fully opaque blem. If you have some sort of ghosting or streaking or spots, it will help with that. And then keep in mind that there's also a bunch of visual artifacts on night vision that just will never go away. They're just intrinsic to the image intensifier. So, I mean, there's only so much you can do, of course.
It kind of reminds me, and maybe it's just me, but probably not. As a kid, leaving the TV on and your parents are like, that screen's got to change. Like it's on a menu for like a VHS or DVD or whatever. Yep. And like, you got to change the screen. It's going to burn the image in.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do it with modern TVs, really. Like, they can sit wherever they want. But kind of what you're talking about.
It's exactly the same technology. Night vision uses a phosphor display that's hit by electrons. Those old school CRTs, phosphor display that's hit by electrons. You can induce burn-in the tube. You can do all kinds of funny things. And if the phosphor is not actually physically depleted or burned, then you can fix it by running the unit.
Okay.
If it did get burned, well, congratulations. That's going to be on there forever.
Fun.
Yeah.
Are there ways to mitigate some of, like you talked about lasers and things like that? Are there ways to mitigate that where if you are in an environment where you're actively using the night vision, is there any type of shield or lens or cover that would help minimize that risk?
Yeah. So if you're going to be in some highlight environment, you could always use like a neutral density filter or an iris or a day cap. The modern like irises and stuff are real fast to put on and real fast to use. So, hey, you can use that if you know you're going to be around some sort of high light source. Laser interference filters do exist. They're out there. It's just that the amount of information about them is not tremendous, and the amount of attenuation that they provide is not tremendous, and the wavelengths that they cover is not tremendous. And it's kind of difficult to identify which ones are which and what they do and yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
Hey, if you're really concerned about it, switch your lasers to aim low. You know, that's going to help you more than trying to buy some kind of product that you don't really know about.
Right. So one of the next ones in ruining your night vision, what about dropping the housing?
Well, that's always a really fun subject. And I'm sure that everyone's done it at least once and had a little heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
So when you drop your night vision, it depends on how you drop it, what's going to happen. Like I said in another video, image intensifiers are sensitive, very sensitive in this direction, in the image direction. In all the other planes, they are relatively not fragile, relatively. So when you're dropping your dots, if you're hitting it, you know, on the lenses like this, you can induce a problem. You can induce a failure. You can break something. You can even induce a blem by doing that. If your night vision is off as well, it also will be a little bit more resistant to that. Obviously not completely resistant to that.
Right.
Everything else sort of depends on the housing. If you're buying a housing by like a normal company, they're probably testing them to a military standard 1.5 meter drop test.
Okay.
And they should be fine. If it's some weirdo old or like some weird company that doesn't know what they're doing, it probably will break. But I think everything that I've seen nowadays is tested that standard, so it should be fine.
Okay.
Now, if your nods are on a helmet, that's a completely different situation there, because you've got, you know, a 1.6 pound helmet with this many pounds of ear pro and lights and accessories.
Right.
Okay. And then you're smashing that onto the night vision. That's going to be an issue.
Right. Little different situation.
Yeah. You can break your mount off. You can break the pods off. You're just applying so much more force from doing that, that, you know, the night vision device probably wasn't even designed for that kind of impact.
Right. And so the drop testing you referenced would just be only the unit itself. There's no testing with the helmet.
That's correct.
How about glass? Is glass really sensitive to that stuff, or are we more concerned about the actual tube itself inside?
So obviously the tube is the most expensive part of your night vision. So I'd be like deathly concerned about that first.
Right.
Lens is only like $300. If I break one, it's not that much of a problem compared to like $3,000 in the device. But hey, all these modern lenses, they are really rugged. A lot of lens companies nowadays are using polymer lenses.
Okay.
And a lot of these lens housings are made out of like super high impact plastics or aluminum. You know, I have yet to ever see someone crack a lens, except in situations where like a Humvee runs it over or a tank runs it over or something like that. Usually the housing will break first. These lenses are definitely quite strong. However, something that needs to be said about lenses too is that the coatings on the outside of the lens that make it like work properly, those are not super strong. So if you have like dust on your night vision, it's probably not a good idea to take like your grubby fingers and rub it all over there and rub a bunch of sand into it. Treat the lens like you would treat your eyes. Never rub it with anything you wouldn't rub your eyeballs on.
Okay.
And if you're going to be in an environment that has like, you know, a bunch of sand or rocks or gravel or like plastic BBs flying around, you're probably going to want to put some sort of protective cover over the front of the lens. And there's a bunch of different companies that make those.
Okay.
So saving that coating and keeping your lenses in working order is very important, because I'm sure that every single person here has gone on like tax swap and seen the $200 aim point and then seen the front of it and then not wanted to buy it if they saw that.
Yeah. So it sounds like it, at least, obviously there are some situations where you just can't help it, but it sounds like for the majority of life-threatening situations to your night vision, there are ways to mitigate. You can now use some type of lanyard system to hold the actual unit. You can protect the glass. Some options. You're not just like, well, too bad, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
An interesting one that I feel like throwing in here, because we've seen a lot of it in the last couple of years, the fragmentation aspect. So you talk about like current situation in Ukraine. There's a lot of people have night vision, but there's a lot of artillery. So we're not talking about a single projectile flying out. We're talking about thousands of micro-sized projectiles, or half-inch or smaller, from those types of explosions. Is there anything, like, I know you guys have a metal housing that's going to be more resistant than a 3D printed, I would assume?
Yeah.
What are some other things, maybe, if you can think of, ideas there protection-wise?
I mean, really the most you can do is protect your lenses. That's something that, like, not like protecting the lenses will magically make the rest of the housing read better, but hey, they make lens covers that are rated to some crazy standard, so it's really easy to protect them. Metal housings are going to be a little bit stronger than the polymer housings. I think that housing that's made of magnesium or aluminum or something like that is going to fare better to, that 3-grain, 1,100 feet per second piece of steel than a piece of plastic. There's not really any products to like up armor your night vision.
Right.
I guess if you were really concerned, you could put some sort of cover or bag over them. That might help a little bit, sap a little bit of energy. But also just sort of keeping them in a position where they're not going to be as exposed as well.
Right.
Is sort of the other thing. If you're going to be putting your head down, you're basically covering your night vision with your helmet, because you're not like facing towards the fragmentation,
hopefully. And another thing that I would think of is exposed wiring. So like, the way that this is set up, you don't have any exposed wires, but if you had potentially a power cable or something like that, the more of that you have, the more likely it's to run into an issue. It kind of gives the MH1 a little bump because you don't have that. If you had a battery pack and it was severed, you could still hook a regular battery into it.
That's correct, yeah.
But that's another whole nother world. It's not super common for us, at least right now, but it is a consideration of. I like the lenses that are up armored and a little beefier lenses to protect that. Should
exactly
it would help. So artillery being one use to itself, and we talked a little bit about like dropping, and I would assume that the concussion of dropping, the concussion of explosives is roughly similar, as far as like what the tubes can handle.
Yeah.
What about flashbang? So I know we talked about like don't look at it, but what are some consequences of either concussion grenades, concussion, or light devices like that?
So, well, here's an interesting number. A lot of manufacturers say that their image intensifiers in the forward-back direction are rated for a total of 70 Gs. Now, for a drop, that's not very good. But 70 Gs is like fatal to your head in a car crash. So if you're facing concussions from explosions that accelerate your head at 70 Gs, you're probably not going to complain about it afterwards.
Right.
Flashbangs and other things like that, it's mainly a light threat to your night vision.
Yeah.
Because those flashbangs, they're like, on the order of like lots and lots and lots of candelas. That would do very bad things very quickly to your nods. I'm sure everyone has seen all of the surplus eBay tubes with all the black spots on them and all those fun things. That's what happens. If you're looking directly at a flashbang, it will blur your night vision. If you're using flashbangs, you can just look away, and the reflected light from the environment probably is not going to be enough to cause any issues. It also depends on the unit that you're using. But with the MH1, we have rotational pod shutoff. With the LUL, we have rotational pod shutoff. And I'm sure that everybody's 31s and all those crazy units all have rotational pod shutoff too. So if the situation allows it, you can rotate the pods up, it turns the unit off, and then just slam them back down when you need them. It depends on your entry procedure too, if you have the time to do that.
Right. Because
you don't want your hands occupied when you're going into a room with people in it.
So once again, mitigation is your friend here, just trying to avoid making unnecessary issues.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again for talking about some of these ways. Is there any other concerns or proactive measures you'd recommend as far as not ruining your night vision?
Well, it depends on your nuts. Don't expose them to salt water.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Don't expose your night vision to helium. Don't expose your night vision to like solvents. More than likely, probably not be very good with the modern plastic night vision.
Right.
Don't expose your night vision to liquefied refrigerants. That's not very good either.
Right. And artillery. So there's I think we've covered all those, right?
Yeah.
All good now. So thank you again for running us through some of these remedies, but also some things to watch out for and giving us some tips. If you guys have questions about potentially ruining your night vision or other night vision misconceptions or ideas, throw them in the comments. We'd love to circle back and bring Brad back and have some more conversation about how to handle your night vision, how to set it up, and so on. So thanks again. Thanks for checking out the video. You can find them at thelightinnovations.com. Is that right?
That's correct.
And social media pages and hrttattooer.com for all of our stuff. Thanks again.